Azure Container Apps is. Azure Container Apps is a fully managed environment that enables us to run our microservices and containerized applications on a serverless platform. The common uses of Azure Container Apps is that it includes that we can deploy endpoints, we have hosting, background process applications, we can handle the event-driven processes as well. Now, for the Azure Container Apps, we have different scaling options. Let's say, as we know that Azure Container Apps is a serverless offering, so definitely it will have some triggers. It will have some things that we will basically scale up our application and scale it down. So, what are those factors that basically up scales up our resources? They can be based on the HTTP request that our application is having. We can have some event-driven processes. We have that some CPU or memory load is has been increased, so it will definitely increase. So if we have the containers that have to be scaled up, we have the KEDA, that is Kubernetes event-driven auto-scaling supported scaler as well. So as we discussed that Azure Container Apps is basically also powered by the Kubernetes. So we will have a brief look at what Kubernetes is. So Kubernetes is one of the powerful container orchestrating tool. As we know that the demand of the containers, as organizations have decided to go with the containerized application, have decided to go with the microservices. Now we needed some platform that where we can handle our containers, where we want to manage our containers in a perfect manner. So we have Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a container orchestrating tool that will basically scale your containers up on demand and scale them down. With the organizations adopting it 61% of the worldwide. Now, what are some of the key benefits of the Kubernetes? It has some automated scaling that we have. It will scale up and scale down our resources. We have also end-to-end developer productivity with debugging and CI/CD integration as well. We have a secure advanced identity and access management to monitor and maintain our container security. And definitely Kubernetes have some integration with support for Linux and Windows servers as well. So now the question arises that why should we consider Azure Container Apps? Now let us discuss that when there is no container apps in the picture, what happened is that when I wanted to deploy my containers, we have container instances and up to we have running the Kubernetes on virtual machines. Now, as it was the previously container instances, we have it was a simpler approach to go with, but we had less flexible and fewer options as when we moved from app services to running the AKS cluster as your Kubernetes service and running our Kubernetes on virtual machines, as it got more flexible with more options, it also got more complex. Now managing a Kubernetes service, a Kubernetes cluster by yourself that when it is running on Kubernetes virtual machine can be tedious and complex sometimes, and managing some of the Kubernetes cluster as well can be tedious sometimes as well if you are hosting your application on AKS. So here it is when container apps come into the picture, that we want an intermediary solution where we can have more options of flexibility, but we want to have less complex infrastructure to manage, less complex Kubernetes server. So let's say what container apps does is container apps basically reduces the overhead to manage our KAS cluster, but it is powered by, as we know that it is powered by Kubernetes event-driven auto-scaling. We have Kubernetes underlying, but we do not have the full access. We do not have to fully manage the Kubernetes cluster. It will be managed by Microsoft Azure itself. So what are some key benefits of the Azure Container Apps? Definitely, as we previously discussed, handling a Kubernetes cluster can be somewhat tedious, and let's say you do not have a very experienced resource to manage your Kubernetes cluster, but you still want your application to be up and running. Azure Container Apps is the option there for you to get started. You have auto scaling with greater depth as it is powered by Kubernetes event-driven auto scaling. It will definitely scale your instances according to the customer needs. We have blue-green by default. We do not require any downtime for our application. Even it is serverless, we do not have any downtime required for our application. Now, as it is powered by Kubernetes, we have somewhat access to our cluster. We will get to that in a moment when where we can see that how much replica counts we want, how much would vCPUs count we want, the things like that we can also manage with the Azure Container Apps.